for the school safety measures. According to public documents, the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District had doubled its security budget in recent years, in part to comply with state legislation passed in the wake of a 2018 school shooting. The district adopted an array of security measures that included its own police force, threat assessment teams at each school, a threat reporting system, social media monitoring software, fences around schools, and a requirement that teachers lock their classroom doors. This is according to the security plan posted on the district's website. NBC News reports the school district has not answered questions about how its security plan was implemented, but the death toll suggests, quote, even security plans that appear to be comprehensive and up to the latest research-based standards may have gaps and ultimately fall short of preventing the worst-case scenario. Joining us now, historian and Rogers Chair in the American Presidency at Vanderbilt University, the aforementioned Jon Meacham. John, I stole your line about the portrait test, but just your thoughts of the last 48 hours absorbing what we're going through in this country.
It's yours to steal. You know, Lincoln said that men act on incentive. So there has we don't have to be we can wish that all these people would do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but if failing that, which is the story of the world since the Garden of Eden, then there has to be an incentive for them to do the right thing. And I do think the power of memory, the power of how they themselves will stand in the stream of time matters enormously. It may not do the trick, but at least it's something. Because there's this kind of, willful failure to engage reality on this. And I'm not sure, not to be, again, overly grand, I'm just not quite sure we're up to this as a democracy. I know our friend Eddie is there. He and I have talked about this a lot. Democracy is really hard because it requires us to see each other not as adversaries, not solely as competitors, but as neighbors. And we don't have to love our neighbor. That'd be great if we did. But if everybody had loved their neighbor way back, then Jesus wouldn't have had to issue a commandment about it. You know, you don't issue commandments about things that people are already doing. We do have to respect that neighbor. And part of respecting that neighbor is being able to go to a school in the United States of America and not worry about being shot by a combat weapon purchased by somebody who, I think I'm right about this, couldn't buy beer legally.
Couldn't buy beer, couldn't rent a car, couldn't do so many other things in the state of Texas.
And those laws and regulations are in place in Texas for what reasons?
Could not buy any of those things, John, and yet you can get a weapon of war.
So here's, Joe, I'm like you. I own guns. The safest place to be a duck is near me with a gun. But I grew up in Tennessee. I would license them. I'd register them without a hint of reluctance. My car is, I register to vote. I register to drive. But somehow I'm not required to have a weapon that can create mayhem without registering it. But leave that aside, because nobody's talking about that. Leave that aside. What if these laws that are on the table, whether it's background checks or just taking, as we would say, weapons of war, far more sophisticated than the weapon that my father carried in combat in Vietnam? Think about that for a second. My father was in the 4th Infantry Division in Pleiku, and he did not have access to this kind of weapon. Just sit with that for 1 second. So let's say that's the case. So stipulate that, because that's a fact. Not that facts tend to matter, but stipulate that for a second. No law is going to solve everything. Tragedy cannot be outlawed. It's not going to happen. But what if one life is saved? Just one. one disturbed person, one white supremacist, one criminal. Accept all the rhetoric on the right about that. Put that in this template. What if it's one life? The Bible tells us that you rejoice at the return of a prodigal. You rejoice at the return of one sheep. And what if that, again, leave aside that that's the right thing to do, so push that to the side. Act on incentive, where we started. What if it were your kid, who's the one kid who doesn't get killed? And think about that sentence for a second. What I just said in 2022, to go to Mike's point. In the United States of America, the longest functioning democracy, I just said a double or triple negative about your kid not being shot. That's suddenly the standard?
Yeah.
But let's make that the standard for the purposes of this conversation. And that's what I would ask everybody who lives not far from where I'm sitting, not far from where, Joe, you grew up, Eddie, you grew up, Willie, you went to school. Here's my point. What if a legislative solution could stop one mass shooting and save one life?
The problem is we have legislative solutions that most definitely would do that have overwhelming support. And not only are we having legislators, Republican legislators and governors refusing to do that, in your state, they're making laws even more radical. I want to read to you what your governor said after passing a law that allows people to carry concealed weapons without a permit, which, by the way, I still patiently wait a year later for my permit in Florida to do the same thing. But if I were in Tennessee or so many other states, I could just walk in, get a gun, put it in my pocket, and walk out. This is what your governor said. Thank you, members of the General Assembly and the NRA, for helping get this done. And John, scene.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a set of priorities that are, I believe, fundamentally wrong. But again, because we live, Edmund Burke taught us this, right? We live in a real world. We have to deal with the world as we confront it. So nobody's saying that suddenly this becomes a Northern European nation. God forbid that we should all live longer and have access to social services. But again, leave that to the side. Nobody is saying that somehow or another something should happen today or tomorrow that would fundamentally alter this culture. We can argue later about whether that culture should be, why it is that the NRA is the way it is. It's all linked, by the way, to most of the things in our life. Again, Professor Glaude can jump in here. But remember, the gun control debates in this country began after what? The riots and the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts of the mid-1960s. Lyndon Johnson signed the 1968 Gun Control Act. It's fascinating. Go read his statement on signing. It's politically, as everything with LBJ, it's politically astute. He's trying to reassure people, saying this is actually a law and order bill. So he knew he had that issue. But guns became an issue in this country as the sort of the contemporary modern era began. It's a 50-year story or so. So yes, everybody wants, people on the right want this to be about Samuel Adams and the flintlocks and all that. And that's a useful and not entirely irrelevant past. Right. But really, this is about the mid-1960s forward. And I just say, nobody's talking about taking everything away. What we're talking about is taking military weapons out of civilian hands.
Yeah, and by the way, this doesn't go back to the Constitution, just like abortion. People don't like to talk about this. Evangelicals, the Baptist Church, Southern Baptists were pro-choice until about 1979, 1980, when suddenly Paul Weyrich and Jerry Falwell said, hey, we could use this issue to get evangelicals away from Jimmy Carter and get them on our side. It's just like gun laws, 1960s. White people in suburbs were freaking out at the riots, and suddenly they were okay with gun control because they didn't want black people to get guns and come to their neighborhoods.